Are you ever really ready? No, not a chance. There's nothing you can do to prepare for it. It is a punch in the face. That's motherhood. It gets easier. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm AmandaMuse. We talk about things here, and today I'm going to be answering some of your questions. So I was on Instagram at AmandaMuse, and I recently did a really fun collaboration with a friend of mine on her podcast, Sarah Nicole, the Bird's Papaya. And there's been a bunch of new faces in my corner of the internet. And I thought, well, why don't we just get to know each other a little bit better? And I'll tackle some questions that you might have. And hopefully we just, we're just that much closer by the end of this video. First question from Nicole's World. How often do you do personal mental check-ins? That's a good question. I have to admit, I think I'm very self-aware, and I can sense as things are shifting. I also go to talk therapy regularly. So I try to book an appointment once a month to see my talk therapist, and I just talk through the things that are going on in my life. And I find like sometimes I have very specific things I want to address in a session, and it's like I'm going in with a topic in mind and some like guidance that I might need. And other times I don't necessarily have a goal in mind. I just kind of like, I don't know, just talk about what's happening in my life. And I find even as you start going through the motions and talking about things that are happening, stuff comes to the surface that you might not even know is impacting you. So yes, I do regular check-ins. As I get older, I get better at this. But as I feel things, like if I'm feeling things and I'm feeling low or I need to take a rest, I really try to take the rest and pull away. It's hard sometimes to pull away, but you only get this one life. And like, if I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on in here and not listen to it, like who's going to do that for me, Robin Kavanaugh was asking, what is your plan for the live show? Will there be a meet and greet? I'm so excited. So if you haven't heard, I am actually opening a show for my friend TOVA Lee, who is a comedian that hails from the UK. She is hilarious. I've had her as a guest on my podcast. I'm going to link her information below, and also a link if you would like to grab tickets to come and see her live show in Toronto. So I'm going to be opening her show in March. I'm still ironing out the details as to what that's going to look like, but it'll be me, top of the show. And I'm trying to figure out, like, should we be doing a meet and greet? What's the interest there? Let me know in the comments if this is of interest to you, and I'll make it happen. But I think it'd be a really fun girls' night out. Kids, no kids, like, you don't have to have kids. It's not a requirement. She is a mom, but she really tackles important topics that impact women around the globe. In a fun way. Like, you just follow her. You'll see what I'm saying. So the next question, I'm actually going to leave the name anonymous because the subject matter could be pertaining to their life and I don't exactly want to out them. But the question is, as a child of divorce, what do you wish your parents did or didn't do during the initial step? I think the first thing I will say is that now things are good, so take that out of the equation, but I wish that my mom had not moved in with her boyfriend right away. That was very confusing. The boyfriend turns out to be my stepdad and it's fine, like everything's fine. We've grown since then. But that was a very, very tricky time and I didn't understand what was happening. It was very complicated. Like, how do two people who are mom and dad and supposed to love each other go from that to now there's a boyfriend? So take your time introducing partners. I realize that as human beings, we crave intimacy, we crave connection with other people. I'm not saying don't have that, but have that in a time where your kids aren't present. Because right now, as you're going through this, they need to be reminded that they have a solid foundation, that two people who are doing it as a group that are now independently going to be offering them in the stability, that hasn't gone anywhere. And I think when you start introducing new partners, it gets things very complicated. And honestly, it's incredibly selfish. It is. Like, put your kids before you. And I think that would have made a world of difference. I think had that relationship been introduced slowly, that relationship would have been better for the years that I lived at home, because it was really rocky up until I was an adult and I made a decision to look at the relationship differently, right? So honest to goodness truth right there. On the subject of relationships, there's a question here from Yasmin saying, how to build boundaries with loved ones whom you do not have a strained relationship with. So there isn't a strained relationship, but you're trying to incorporate boundaries. I think the first thing that just pops into my mind is communication. So I'll give you an example. My dad and I are super tight, always have been. And when we have disagreements, we talk about them. I tend to be doing rather like attached parenting style. You know, I don't mind if my kids sleep in my bed. Well, like I do mind, but they're there and whatever. It's not the end of the world. And for a long time I was co-sleeping and exclusively breastfeeding, and then like breastfeeding beyond baby days. And I can't even remember the name of that, extended breastfeeding. Like, wow, you're out of it for 1 minute and you forget everything. But I remember my dad, without realizing it, and if he's watching, you already know, but he made a comment like, it wasn't even about the breastfeeding, it was about the diapers because Jack wasn't potty trained quickly. Anyway, it was some sort of comment like, when's he going to be potty trained, or when's he going to sleep in his own bed? And in my own way, which might have been a little more direct than required, I was like, hey, are you changing diapers? Are you sharing a bed? Don't worry about it. It's not impacting your life. And I think that just by communicating your thoughts and feelings around something that is your life, not impacting anybody else's, and if you do it in a very clear way that gets the message across, maybe you need to do it more than once, habits start to form. And also, when you do set a clear boundary, there's a line now that people know not to cross. And if you don't establish those lines, people are going to walk all over it and upset you, and it's just going to be it's a very uncomfortable way to live. I think just establishing clear boundaries with communication and reasons why in a way that isn't like, you're doing this wrong and you're hurting me by saying that. It's like, hey, this is important to me. I'm not rushing my kid coming back to the potty training. I'm all about him figuring it out on his own. And here we are, many years later, the child is fully potty trained, no problems. I will eventually get them to sleep in their own beds, but that's a subject for another day. But I think just clear communication with reasons why it's important to you, not attacking the other person so that they don't stop listening. Because if I've learned anything in my 35 years, the second a person feels attacked, the ears shut off. So, a little thing there. Amanda Janelle was asking, how did Esme's sleepover go and what made you change your mind about them? This is a topic I've been meaning to tackle because I literally get comments every single day on that video. So if you click up here, you're going to see a video where I said, no to sleepovers, and I'm very firm on my reasons why. I have shifted my opinion slightly because, to be fair, that was like 2 years ago. My kids were much smaller. Well, 2 years smaller, because we can all do the mental math. And I stand by that video. So my opinions haven't changed. Where it's changed just slightly, Esme has gotten older, and there are certain friendships in her life that are like family, super tight. And the parents and I are super close, and I'm very comfortable with that friend of hers sleeping over. However, there are certain things. So my husband is not totally comfortable having extra kids in the house, and I respect that. And so what I do is I tend to host the sleepovers only when I'm solo parenting. They're only at my house. And it's like with one friend. We've only done it with one friend, and it worked out, and it's okay. We've had a cousin sleep over, and even then though, they all sleep here. Like, I'm not comfortable yet allowing my children to sleep at someone else's house and be under someone else's care for the night. That's a no-go territory for me. And we have, and I think I mentioned this in that video, but I tackled the subject of like a fake sleepover. So allowing the friends to come over, have the PJ party, watch the movies, stay a little later, and then scoot on home. So we haven't really had to do that yet. It's just not a topic of conversation. So the irony is that I'm the one that initiated the sleepover with the friend because we have moved, and it's just easier for the friend to stay over rather than the parents and I having to go back and forth. So it's interesting, and I think if anything, and I even say it in the video, like opinions are subject to change. And as your children develop and go through, different stages in their life and, what they can handle, we have to shift and pivot as parents. And we tried it. It worked. We allowed one more sleepover. So she's had 2 sleepovers in the time that we've been in the new house, which is like 6 months or so. And yeah, it's worked well. Of course, Jack asked for a sleepover. That's not happening. I do not need 2 5-year-olds in my house, not a chance. And the kids are not, I don't feel the children are developmentally ready to have sleepovers. Anyway, if you're curious about that whole video, go check it out. I lay out my reasons why. I stand firm beside them. But hey, we're open to trying new things, as always. Because I always say, if anything in life, the only thing that's consistent is change. And I'm open to new ideas, It's Kiki Bird is wondering, how do you know, or how did you know when you were ready for motherhood? Are we ever really ready? We are not ever really ready. That said, though, if you feel like you just don't want children, trust that, really. There was a great episode I listened to on a podcast called Motherhood Sessions, which is wonderful, kind of along the lines of Esther Perel's Where Should We Begin? Where Shall We Begin? Where do we begin? Anyway, therapist talking to patients. It's really informative. It's very interesting to hear a session. So if you're ever curious about how talk therapy goes, listen to that podcast. It's basically like that if you have a great therapist. And Motherhood Sessions is the similar thing, a therapist speaking to her patients, and they are mothers, and it's topics that fall in, the motherhood realm. And there was one where there was a woman who didn't want to have children, but kind of got suckered into it because she got married and her husband was like, I thought this was part of the deal. And I just think that you just don't want to get into things for other people. That complicates life. And are you ever really ready? No, not a chance. There's nothing you can do to prepare for it. It is a punch in the face. That's motherhood. It gets easier. but it is you just don't see it coming, even when you've been pregnant for 9 months, or even if you've been going through an adoption process for years, or IVF, nothing can prepare you, even if you want it badly. I think there are some things that are nice to have ahead of time. I personally wanted to be married. I wanted to, be in less debt. I wanted to have things like cars and homes and stuff like that. So some of it was on my list when I had Esme. Some of it was not. And it's worked out. But if you're ever feeling like you want children, but you're just not ready and you don't know how to be ready, it'll never happen. So just do it. You'll figure it out. Just like the rest of us. Pictures of My Whole Life was asking, if you couldn't make YouTube videos, what would you do to make money? Well, I'll tell you this much. I am an ambitious person who's worked my entire life. So if you are new to my channel and you're thinking, well, what could she have done? Head over here. I'll include a video of the many jobs I've had in my life. But before I really dove into the business side of what I do, there was a point we had come back to Canada. I realized, life's a little bit more expensive in Canada, and I would like to have a double income for my husband and myself. And I sat down and I was like, okay, you've got a year to make a go of this. And if it doesn't work out, you're going into real estate. So not to say that I'd be particularly great at sales, but I just think that there's elements of my personality that's very disarming and relatable, and I can talk to anybody, and I think it would be kind of a fun gig that there's some flexibility. However, I think it would be tricky because the realtors and real estate agents tend to have to work in the evenings and on weekends because people aren't checking out houses on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. normally. So I think that's what I would have done. But I also have experience in insurance and administrative type of jobs. And so I would have done something. I'm definitely not a person to sit around and not work. I don't understand. If you have the time and the ability to work, why wouldn't you want to earn an income? It's so rewarding. So anyway, but check out that video. Lots of strange elements of my history, I tell you. And this is from Simi B, and they were saying, what are your thoughts on extra activities outside of the school hours, skating, swimming, that kind of thing? I vary. My opinion kind of, I don't know. I'll tell you this. So I was into it when they were small and they didn't have school. Like I put Esme in ballet classes and I just wanted her to have friends. So my point then, preschool, not preschool because she didn't go to preschool, but like elementary school, I just wanted her to have people to meet in the neighborhoods that we lived because we had lived in a few different places and it was like we didn't have friends to just call. So we did a little bit of ballet. We did that kind of stuff. She enjoyed it. Then we started school and I realized, oh, this is a whole lot. And I was paying attention to their moods and their energy levels. And I also had like a little baby, you know, to chase around when Esme was smaller. So it just didn't make a lot of sense. We did a dance class at the Y. It was exhausting because I had to sit there with Jack and entertain him. And I was like, why are we doing this? So then we paused extracurriculars for a while. They also weren't begging for it. So I was like, well, you don't know what you're missing. So like, I'm not going to force this on you because this is going to be a lot and maybe you can't quite handle it. Then at the start of this year, so in September, we did some skating lessons. And Jack didn't mind it. Esme hated it. So after some discussion and some acknowledgement of like, I'm not doing this, like mommy's not going to pay for things that you don't want to go to. And we had like a whole discussion. So we handled it appropriately. We ended up pulling her out of it. And then we took a break this semester because I'm not paying for things that I'm going to force my children to go to unless you like really want it. So now that we're a few weeks back into the school year and starting 2020, Jack has shown some serious interest in Kung Fu, not karate, but Kung Fu. And he's kind of obsessed with Chinese culture. And I have a book on my desk that's all about Kung Fu. And he literally sits on his iPad and gets Google to translate English words into Mandarin. It's fascinating. He pretends he can write in Chinese writing. It's crazy. The long story short is I think they're cool. I think they're great. I think your kid has to want to do them though. And so I question when it's like you're forcing your kids to go do things, even if you think it's for the best. Sometimes for the best is being bored and coming up with ideas and entertainment on your own, because that's a wonderful life skill to acquire. But sometimes your kid has got like pent up energy and they just need to let it out. So I see both sides. Ultimately, my opinion comes down to what's best for your kid specifically. I've learned that Jack likes a certain thing and Esme likes a certain thing. At this point, Esme would enjoy the more one-on-one type of activity. So we're looking at pursuing some piano lessons and some singing lessons, which is more up her alley than this group, you know, skating situation. The irony, P.S., of all of this is our neighbors have a skating rink in their backyard and my kids go skating nearly like 4 or 5 times a week with their friends and they love it. So it truly did come down to just the structure, the environment of the lesson and not so much the actual activity. So, you know, you win some, you learn some. And, you know, I learned a few things about my kids along the way. So again, like the sleepover thing, my opinion will change. And if my child is showing really like a strong interest in something, well, I want them to pursue it. Like I never would have picked Kung Fu for Jack, but he loves it and he asks about it every single day. And literally right after I hit record on this and stop recording, I'm going to go and find out when to take him for a lesson because he's like super pumped about it. So anyway, that's the scoop. I thank you so much for joining me for this video. Subscribe if you're new. If you have any questions you'd like me to tackle, leave them below and I'll include that in my next Q&A. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.